Όπως είπα και πριν, θα ξεκινήσουμε με τον κύριο Ζαΐντι, να τον καλωσορίσουμε και να τον ευχαριστήσουμε πάρα πολύ την τιμή που μας κάνει να συμμετέχει στην ημερίδα μας και να μας παρουσιάσει τις τρέχουσες εξελίξεις όσον αφορά το κομμάτι των έρευνα αποφύτων στο tracking, graduate tracking στην Ευρώπη. Κύριε Ζαΐντι, έχετε το λόγο και με ενδιαφέρον σας περιμένω να δούμε τις προσεγγίσεις σας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to your interesting event. I just wanted to prepare with you some slides. I will just share my screen now. Sorry, can you all see that okay?
Yes, it looks fine, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Well, hi, my name's Ali. I'm a lead managing consultant at ICF. We've been working with the European Commission, helping them look at graduate tracking systems in place, and currently doing some research looking at some of the data sources used for graduate tracking. So as mentioned, we've done two studies looking at EU graduate tracking, one in VET and HE, the last of which was published in June 2020. We've also produced a how to do it well guide to graduate tracking based on good practice that we have found from our endeavors. So our research on VET graduate tracking in Europe comprised country depth research with EU and EEA countries, interviews with 95 national stakeholders, a comparative analysis of systems in different countries, and an assessment of country compliance with the 2017 graduate tracking recommendation. And what I wanted to present to you today was an overview of recent national developments in graduate tracking, looking at system level tracking, national policies and developments, and then talk to you some of the characteristics and comparative analysis of tracking measures, how these measures have been implemented and what works well, areas of improvement. Okay, so first, the European picture. So we found 20 countries have system level graduate tracking systems in place for HE and VET. The remainder are making developments. And you'll actually see here, in a lot of countries, it is both a legal obligation and regular practice or well-developed practice. Now, within these countries, there were 123 graduate tracking measures at system level. Overall, 78 of these measures included surveys and 79 included linking administrative data collection. Many countries use both methods since they complement each other, as in the administrative data linking helps provide quantitative impact on it can provide quantitative impact on salaries, on the percentage that enter employment, but then the surveys provide very valuable information about graduate perceptions of their training program, and also the link between what they learned and what they're doing in the workplace. Are they applying what they learned, etc.? Was the course relevant to the needs of their job? Now, the reason you have so many graduate tracking measures is that a lot of them are based around particular areas of VET. So sometimes you can have programs for different programs, e.g. for an ESF program, as well as IVET, as well as for CVET. You can also have and you also have elements for different at different levels as well, perhaps. And the coverage of the target population. So most of the graduate tracking measures cover completers. A smaller number include those that have left without completing. So it includes early leavers as well as completers. And only a few cover migrants after graduation. So these are people that have left the country and found employment in another country. Obviously, this is very challenging for administrative data if they're paying tax in another country. And it's also quite challenging for a survey as they will have moved and have a new telephone number in many cases. And it's only around a third of graduate tracking that measure that collect information more than twice. So they can provide longitudinal data looking at both the short-term and the longer-term impacts. So, and in terms of the information collected from these graduate tracking measures, well, they vary considerably. I suppose the most commonly collected information is employment status, followed by socio-biological and socio-economic information. Quite a number also collect information on the further education and training pathways. So whether a vet student, for example, has progressed to higher vet, to HE, or another training program. Some provide information about the training course they've done, but then fewer provide information about satisfaction, the relevance of the skills to their workplace, and any social and civic activity they are participating in, such as volunteering. So across Europe, what we find is in terms of strength, there's a wide range of graduate tracking measures in place, and it's becoming an increasing policy focus. Areas of improvement across Europe, we're finding, well, you generally have better coverage of IVET than CVET, and actually CVET is not included in that many measures. So that is an area which we recommended countries work on. As I showed in the previous slide, there's also considerable variation in the measures and the information that is being collected on graduate tracking. And we recommended it would be nice to have some convergence in both the measures and the time period that they're conducted, because obviously a survey conducted 6 months after a student graduated is not quite the same as a survey conducted 12 months after they graduated. They're collecting different things. Now, because there's so many different measures as well, we are also recommending establishing greater convergence between national and provider level graduate tracking. And actually, in a lot of countries, providers can play a critical role in the graduate tracking because they do have that relationship with graduates. And some have done this, some have used this to help elicit higher response rates. So in terms of now I wanted to talk to you about some of the good practice that we've identified from graduate tracking. So the first thing we found is around the preparation, having a clear business case. And this is about framing measures around the key questions you want to answer and also the level of disaggregation you required. If you want data that breaks down graduate outcomes by different sectors, then you need to make sure, then you need to work this out up front because it has a big influence on your sample. You may, for example, also want to disaggregate it for apprenticeships, for IVET, for CVET. Again, just being clear on this is important because it will inform what data you collect. Actually, areas where you have very strong relationships here are in Sweden and also in Ireland, where both the national statistics agencies have taken quite a key role in this. The case in Ireland is very interesting, actually, because there the graduate tracking measure was developed as a product that the statistics agency felt they could actually provide to government stakeholders. So as part of developing that product, they conducted market testing to find out what they need and then built that into what they do. The next thing that's important is determining graduate coverage. Now, obviously, it is easier to survey graduates than those that are within your country, but you might feel there's a value in collecting information on early leavers. They are important because often early leavers would have negative impact, might have negative perceptions of courses which need to be captured. They also remain the significant challenge around migration, getting information from learners who migrate after graduation. And this is an area as well that it's not an easy fix, but by understanding beforehand that you need to do it. There might be, then you can work around solutions. They're the Alma Laurea tracking measure in Italy, which actually works as a one-stop shop for graduates. It's for HE, but what it does is it provides the job matching service, it provides employment information. So actually that encourages people to attend, and from that, the country is able to get high response rate because they send a survey through that. The next step is deciding on the tracking measure, because they all have strengths and weaknesses. Administrative data, as I said, is relatively comprehensive and avoids self-reporting bias, particularly around employment. You know what people earn. Surveys are better for capturing views on graduate perceptions. Did they like the training? Did they apply what they learned on the training? So actually, some of the best options are around combining both, although of course this is more costly. And the final step is around allocating responsibility, who does what. And I suppose the key challenge with administrative data is who does what is quite complex, because often you're talking about data from different ministries and different agencies. In terms of the design of the tracking measures, it's important to have consistent periodicity, so collecting it at the same time. From what we've looked in our research, most countries do 3 to 12 months after graduation. Probably the most common within that is 6 months after graduation. It's enough time to allow graduates to gain employment, but not too long before they forget all about their training course. And then the next thing is around deciding what data collect. Some of the common things are there. Again, it needs to link back to what you want to do with this data. But it's important to collect out the information you need, and also to ensure it's collected in a consistent format. And then finally, and this is particularly an issue for administrative data, it's around respecting data protection rules. We found countries that have problems with this. We found, and I suppose the most common ways in which countries have resolved this is around using pseudo-anonymized data. So you take out all the names, addresses, and just use an ID for the learners, which means it becomes non-disclosive. There's also need for aggregation of data for too small groups, and restricted access to raw data. And there are lots of different ways countries do that, with an accreditation system, or only letting it being used on certain computers in certain buildings. Surveys, again, lots of different options of surveys. Online surveys are low cost and flexible. Telephone surveys, higher cost, but you get a better response and more interviewing. And it's important as well on deciding on sampling approach. A lot of the surveys that we find are convenient sampling. So you send a survey out to everyone and you wait for them to respond back. The problem with this is that there might be some people that are hard to reach groups who are less likely to respond. So it biases your responses a little bit. Where if you have a probability sampling, you can actually set out quite quotas for particular groups and make sure you achieve that. So what you get at the end is a representative. And with the administrative data, what's critical here is having clear fields for data linking and ensuring the data is quality, that you do have a learner ID, and that learner ID is collected for every single learner. In terms of use of data, now lots of different ways that the data is used. What we found in our research was, I suppose, 23 measures. 70 are used to monitor and evaluate education policies, 64 to contribute to policy developments, 55 for careers guidance, 53 to support the design of curriculum. It also helps understand employment, education and social needs, and improve skills matching. Lots of different ways that they've been done. There's an example in the Netherlands where actually the outcomes of the graduate tracking measures are helpful in enabling the Netherlands to agree indicators and performance criteria for their providers. So they actually negotiate with providers saying, oh, well, 80% of your students have progressed into employment. we would like you to increase that to 82. So it's quite, for example, so it's quite useful in that context. Actually, I've also heard lots of providers have said to me that they really like having the graduate tracking measures because it helps them go to their ministry, go to their funders and ask for more money because it allows them to demonstrate what they do well. In Germany, you've also got examples of vet tracking surveys looking at skills needs and skills demand among the workforce, how many people are going into employment, whether you've got enough graduates coming in. So that can affect their provision. Okay, and in terms of sharing data now, there are lots of different ways that countries have taken to sharing data. Some provide summary tables, some provide comparison tables, which is quite interesting, where you can actually compare different programs and you can compare different providers in your local area. And some countries also provide microdata to researchers to look at and play with as they see fit. In Finland, they have a system in place which presents the anonymized tables and data in an online tool. So the online tool, it allows a user to come and play around with the data and cut it as they see fit, with all the data being securely hidden behind the portal. So that's nice because it allows people to get the bespoke data that they need for their particular program. It can allow one provider in, say, Athens to compare their tracking out their graduate outcomes to other providers in Athens, to see where they're doing well, where they could be improving. So it can be used for multiple reasons. So that was a quick one through of my presentation. I'm happy to take on board any questions that you might have.
Mr. Zaidi, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Θα θέλαμε να επισημάνω και σε αυτή την παρουσίαση ότι οι έρευνες παρακολούθησης των αποφύτων είναι πολύ παραγωγικές, λαμβάνουν υπόψη πάρα πολλά στοιχεία. Αυτό που είναι εντυπωσιακό είναι το πλήθος των ερευνών που έχουν πραγματοποιηθεί και σε ευρωπαϊκό επίπεδο, αλλά και το γεγονός ότι τα αποτελέσματα των ερευνών αξιοποιούνται σε πάρα πολλούς τομείς, τροφοδοτούν πάρα πολλούς τομείς της επαγγελματικής εκπαίδευσης και κατάρτισης, τόσο στην αξιολόγηση των πολιτικών εκπαίδευσης και απασχόλησης, όσο και στην ανάπτυξη νέων πολιτικών. Και όπως είπαμε και πιο πριν και με τους προηγούμενους εισηγητές, το να κάνεις μια έρευνα είναι κάτι πολύ σημαντικό και είναι κάτι, αλλά το να ερμηνεύσεις τα αποτελέσματα σωστά είναι επίσης το ίδιο σημαντικό. Και θα μείνω σε αυτό που είπε ο κ. Ζαΐντι για το τρόπο που μπορείς να κάνεις share τα data, δηλαδή πώς θα μπορείς να μοιράσεις τα στοιχεία, ούτως ώστε να μπορούν αυτά να είναι χρήσιμα και αξιοποιήσιμα για να παράξουν κάποιο είδους πολιτική και αποτελέσματα. Κύριε Ζαΐντι, σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ και σας ευχαριστούμε επίσης για την υπομονή σας που πήγαμε λίγο πίσω στο πρόγραμμα. Είμαστε πάντα κοντά στο δίκτυο, στο Eqavet, στη Γραμματεία του δικτύου, και είναι τιμή μας πάλι που σας φιλοξενήσαμε στη σημερινή μας ημερίδα.
No problem. I was delighted to attend. I sadly have to drop off now for another meeting, but if any of you do have any questions or require any further information, then Antonios has my email address, so he can share that with you. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your conference.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Γεια σας, γεια σας. Bye. Τώρα θα ήθελα να καλέσω τα εθνικά σημεία αναφοράς από την Κροατία και από τη Σλοβενία και να δώσω στο λόγο στη συνάδελφο Σάντρα Ντόμπριτς από το Εθνικό Σημείο Αναφοράς της Κροατίας, όπου θα μας παρουσιάσει τις προσεγγίσεις της Κροατίας όσον αφορά το παρακολούθηση των αποφύτων της επαγγελματικής εκπαίδευσης και κατάρτισης. Όπως σας είπα και προηγουμένως, ο ΠΕΠ έχει συμμετάσχει σε αμοιβαίες επισκέψεις στα Εθνικά Σημεία Αναφοράς. Μας έχει δοθεί δυνατότητα να συνομιλήσουμε με τους ανθρώπους εκεί, όπως επίσης και να επισκεφθούμε πολλές σχολές επαγγελματικής παιδείας και κατάρτισης και να δούμε την κουλτούρα, το κλίμα και τα συστήματα εκεί. Σάντρα, θα χαρούμε πάρα πολύ να δούμε τις δικές σας προσεγγίσεις. Και πάλι σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ που δέχτηκες, κάναμε αυτή τη μικρή παραχώρηση στην ώρα και αρχίσαμε λίγο πιο αργότερα την παρουσίασή σου. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, Σάντρα.
Hello, I hope you can hear me well. Thank you, Eqavet, for inviting us to present our system of... Excuse me? Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you, Sandra. Quite well.
Okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Thank you for inviting us again and to present our experiences in graduate tracking. So without further ado, I would like to share my presentation that I've prepared, which is relatively short, and hopefully will be of interest. Just let me find it first. Can you see it now?
We can see your desktop, I think, but not the presentation.
Not the presentation. Okay.
See your folder files.
Okay. Not sure why this is, but I will try again. Oh, okay, there it is. Is it better now? Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. In Croatia, we have started our graduate tracking initiative in 2017. And we have conducted so far 2 cycles of graduate tracking. Our graduate tracking is in its pilot stage, and it's focused on the provider level, so vet provider level. Within this initiative, we have developed methodology and an instrument for graduate tracking. Our aim is primarily to collect feedback on education programs for the benefit of vet providers, and also to see where graduates progress after they finish vet. This is also one of our strategic goals that we have set for ourselves in our main strategic document for the development of vet in Croatia since 2016. Also, this initiative is in line with the main strategic framework for vet. I am sure that is also very familiar to you, starting from the Eqavet recommendation up until today and the Council recommendation on vet. You have heard about this earlier today, so I will not go into further details. And also, just like the Greek initiative, our intention is through this graduate tracking that we're piloting to track indicators of the Eqavet number 5 and number 6. So our intention is to learn more about the destination of vet learners after completing vet. To learn about their employment rates, to learn about the occupation that they hold after they have finished vet and how this is in line with the qualifications they have completed or attained. And we also want to know about their satisfaction and the relevance of skills that they have acquired through vet. Our tracking instrument consists of 2 parts. One is the exit survey that the graduates complete when they are in their final year of initial vet. About 1 year or a year and a half, so 18 months, we conduct the main survey. Our survey, as you will see, is a little bit more extensive, as I could gather, in comparison to the survey that EOPEP conducted. So far we have piloted it in 3 providers in the first cycle and in 7 providers in the second cycle. Just to show you a little bit its structure, as I said, it is a little bit more extensive. In the first part of the survey, all respondents complete or fill out, give their answers to questions about their education experience. So here we have a wealth of qualitative data, a wealth of actually graduate perceptions their perception of the education that they have received and how relevant it is for their further careers, whether they go into employment, further education, or in some cases if they're unemployed or inactive. So in this first part, they give feedback to VET providers on the satisfaction with different aspects of the program, and they also self-assess the competences that they acquired in VET. In the next part of the survey, they complete only the part that corresponds to their current status. So if they are, for example, currently employed, they complete the most extensive part of the survey where they give data about their current position. And we particularly look here for 2 things. One is how it is matched to the qualification they have completed. And the second is how the skills that they are using now in their occupation are matched to the skills that they have attained through education. We also have some open questions at the end where VET graduates can give recommendations to their VET providers for improving VET programs. And also we asked them if they would like to participate in the next iteration of the survey, which gives VET providers the opportunity to engage possibly in a more longitudinal survey of their graduates. This is our tracking cycle. As I mentioned, so the time between when graduates finish education and between the main survey is, in our case, over 1 year, so about 18 months. After this, we, as Eqavet NRP in Croatia, we support our VET providers in analyzing the data. So this ensures also data quality. And we train them in data analysis and reporting. We also have numerous support workshops and consultations. We also collect feedback, and this allows us to improve each surveying cycle. Just to present briefly some findings, I would first like to say that since our survey is VET provider based, it is difficult to generalize. So we indeed have a really extensive qualitative data for the benefit of each provider, and not only on the level of the provider, but for each qualification. You can analyze in depth the satisfaction and the relevance of the qualification for future employment or for continuing education. So it is hard to generalize that. The results will be different for the qualification of a hairdresser in one city and for qualification of a nurse in another city, and depending on the vet provider. We are also very pleased that our vet providers have managed to have a really high response rate to their surveys. So this also depends on the vet provider, and our range, as you can see, is from about 30 to almost 75%. And 4 out of 7 providers have even over 50% of response rate. So this is something that we definitely applaud our vet providers for achieving. We also try to have a balanced geographical representation of vet providers in our survey, and also different vet qualifications. Also, what is very encouraging is, as you can see, over 75% of graduates that have completed the survey expressed their interest to participate if this survey was conducted again. Also, what we have found is that the destinations of graduates greatly differ depending primarily on the qualification they have completed. And this is also in line with the national statistics, where we can see that that graduates from 4-year programs have much higher incidence of going into higher education, whereas those who have completed 3-year IVET programs tend to go to the labor market after completing vet. And this is in line with our other national data. Also, we have found some interesting feedback on reasons why students chose their vet programs. And this actually reflects on the image of vet in the society. So for a lot of students, it was a desire to exercise a specific occupation, so intrinsic motivation. They also saw that vet was an opportunity for fast employment and to have practical training in their programs. Also, some things that were quite common for many schools, for many of our piloting schools, is that their students were actually very satisfied with the programs that they had completed. In most schools, it is around, the grade is at 4.0, and this is on a 1 to 5 scale. Also, they were mostly satisfied with their teachers, with the professional services at the vet provider, sometimes also activities and projects of the vet provider, and also with general and vocational competences that they had acquired. They were somewhat less satisfied in some programs with the practical training component, and especially practical training conducted in the world of work, so at workplaces. What is also, but this is, I have to say, this depends on the qualifications. Actually, in some qualifications that had a lot more work-based learning, students were, on the contrary, very pleased with the practical training they had at their school. So it's not a clear picture across, of course, all vet providers and all qualifications. Some things that were also very interesting is that those who decided to continue on to higher education said that they saw that a higher level of education increased chances for employment, and this was true for almost 70% of those students. And those who continued to employment said, so the majority of them, over 50%, that they did so because they wanted to work, and not because, for example, they couldn't enroll in universities or any other reason. For most of them, they really wanted to go to the labor market. Also, what is one finding that is similar across all VET providers is that they, on average, graduates find that their VET programs provided them a good foundation to continue on to higher education, and also that competences were useful at the workplace. The grades here are indicated again on the scale from 1 to 5. Also, what we could see that in most cases, graduates could find their first job quite fast after graduation, so within 1 month for the vast majority of them. And something that I found was similar to, I believe, findings of the survey conducted in Greece, is that a lot of them relied on the information from the family, friends, and acquaintances in finding their jobs. And this is more so than, for example, relying on the public employment service. Also, quite a large number of them actually contacted employers directly, which was also an interesting finding. Against the backdrop of students finding their first jobs quite quickly, it may be noted that their first job significantly less corresponded to their qualification level and to their qualification profile or their educational field. Whereas after 1.5 years approximately after graduating, you can see that that match of the qualification that they had attained with its level and its field or its occupation matched quite highly the demands of their current job, so around 70%. Also, one thing that our survey allows us to compare is, I would say, similar to what I could learn about the survey conducted in Greece. So we also try to identify the skills match or mismatch. And something that struck me is that also in our case, students thought that their language competence, for example, on the example of this school, their language competences were, I mean foreign language competences are not as important in the workplace compared to the levels of foreign language competences that they attained during their education. We also compare entrepreneurial skills and a lot of different transversal competencies. To try to conclude, I would like to mention some of the use of the results that our VET providers have. Mostly, they stress that they use the results to improve their programs. So to advance teaching and learning, to advance cooperation with workplaces and work-based learning delivery. But a lot of them also use the results for VET provider promotion and outreach to prospective students to try to increase enrollment in some programs. They also, some of them also say that they would like to establish alumni networks and that they are considering different ways to involve their graduates, so their former students, in the activities of the school and for the benefit of the school community. What we encourage them as Eqavet NRP and as a national agency, which also is in charge of ensuring quality of VET, is to use the results as evidence to conduct self-assessments and to use the results also for short-term and long-term planning of VET provision. And maybe just quite a brief summary. Our challenges and our experiences so far were that in terms of experiences, the graduate tracking model on the vet provider level proved beneficial to vet providers, but it demanded quite a lot of their efforts in conducting the survey, and they found the results useful. In terms of challenges, we are still looking to increase a bigger number of vet providers in graduate tracking, especially because we have actually a high interest of vet providers that would like to also including employers is something that we would like to consider in the future. And also it was very interesting learning about how you do it in Greece. Maybe without further ado, I hope I haven't taken too much time. I am open for your questions if anything was just or further clarification.
Dear Sandra, thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Αυτό που βλέπουμε λοιπόν, είδα μια άλλη προσέγγιση από την Κροατία, όπου εκεί η έρευνα η έρευνα του tracking των αποφύτων γίνεται σε επίπεδο παρόχων και όχι σε γενικό επίπεδο. Εγώ θα σταθώ σε δύο θέματα. Το ένα είναι κάποια κοινά σημεία, τα οποία έχουν και δύο έρευνες η δική μας, το ΕΟΠΕΠ και η δική σας, όσον αφορά τις ξένες γλώσσες και όσον αφορά επίσης και το πώς βρίσκουν οι απόφοιτοι δουλειά μέσω των κοινωνικών δικτύων της οικογένειας κτλ. Και κάτι που έκανε εντύπωση πολύ είναι ότι φαίνεται στην Κροατία πολλοί επιλέγουν την επαγγελματική υπηρεσία κατάρτιση επειδή έχει καλό image, έχει καλή φήμη. Κάτι το οποίο είναι πολύ σημαντικό. Παρ' όλα αυτά όμως υπάρχει η επιλογή να πάνε σε ανώτατη εκπαίδευση για να βρουν πιο εύκολα δουλειά με ένα 69% ποσοστό. Βλέπουμε λοιπόν ότι οι έρευνες αυτές θέλουν έτσι μια πάρα πολύ καλή ανάλυση των στοιχείων για να μπορέσει να χρησιμοποιεί και να εξάγουν χρήσιμα και πολύτιμα αποτελέσματα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ, Σάντρα, για την παρουσίασή σου και τώρα θα περάσω στη Σάσα, στην Κράσιτς, από το Εθνικό Σημείο Αναφοράς της Σλοβενίας. Με τη Σάσα είμαστε χρόνια γνωστοί στο δίκτυο Eqavet, με πολύ αξιόλογη δράση στη Γραμματεία και στο δίκτυο. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που είστε μαζί μας σήμερα και θέλουμε να ανυπομονούμε να δούμε τη προσεγγίση σας στη Σλοβενία όσον αφορά την παρακολούθηση των αποφύτων της επαγγελματικής εκπαίδευσης κατάρτισης. Είναι δικό σου το πάνελ. Ευχαριστώ.
Hello, everybody. I hope that you hear me and that you also see my presentation. Is everything okay?
Yes, we can see it and we can hear you. Thank you.
So you can see the presentation, obviously. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Antonios, for your introduction, and thank you, everybody, for inviting me to this very important event of yours. Mr. Antonios Glaros is also a very important guest at our national conference on quality in vet. And we are collaborating with other national reference point in the network as much as possible, because the exchange of experience is working as an inspiration for our development activities as well. In this presentation, I hope you still have the energy to listen to the last presentation after all these hours. I would like to present an experience from the first phase of piloting the graduate tracking system on vet providers level. We only made the first steps from January until March 2021. from January 2021 to March 2021. So I cannot show yet results or a complex story or already developed methodology, but just the first experience. My presentation is structured by 3 parts. In the first part, I will address theoretical background, but I will try to be as short as possible because speakers before me already mentioned the Eqavet framework and the Eqavet indicators and also the PDCA cycle. So I will try not to repeat myself. Then I will address the starting point, the snapshot from 2017 of the current state of mind concerning the VET graduate tracking, and from which we continue to plan our further activities concerning the VET graduate tracking. And then in the third part, obviously, I will talk about the experiences from the first phase of piloting the tracking system on the VET providers level. So Mr. Glaros and also other speakers, Sandra and also other speakers as well, already mentioned the Eqavet indicators, and usually in relation to VET graduate tracking, we are usually mentioning the Eqavet indicator 5 and 6, but we try to make a wider story here. So we are trying to include also Eqavet indicator 7 and 9 at the same time, and also to relate those indicators with the other indicators like enrollment and completion rate, and also if individual graduate is member of some kind of vulnerable group or special need groups or something else. Those tracking systems or evaluation of the VET provision and the level of balance of VET provision with the labor market needs to be addressed on 2 levels, on system level and on the level of VET providers. Those are 2 different stories, and each story have its own purpose, and needs of VET providers are different than needs of a system level. So in this our piloting, we came to the conclusion that you cannot summarize the results from the VET providers to the national level and make conclusions on the quality of the whole system of vocational education and training, but you need to develop the separate tracking system on the level of the whole VET. We would like to develop the tracking system on both levels, which would track the whole generations from the enrollment through the completion of VET programs and finally to the employment or further studies of the generation of students. And also in this last period, we would like to evaluate or to monitor the graduates 2 or even 3 times, like from 6 to 1 month to 1 year after conclusion the VET programs, then 2 to 3 years after completion, and finally 5 years after completion. And those indicators would be I hope it could be linked to the other data, such as VET program, VET sector, gender, region. Are we talking about students or adults? Is it school-based or apprenticeship educational program? And if are we talking about some special needs groups or about the graduates in general. Starting point in 2017 was that in Slovenia on national level, we do not have tracking system in upper secondary VET or in higher VET. But on the other hand, VET providers are obliged to monitor all 10 Eqavet indicators from 2017. So we made an evaluation of VET providers on monitoring the needs of labor market, and we asked them. We found out that a lot of VET providers have been evaluating the labor market needs already for 10 or 15 years, but this their evaluation system were not completely in balance with the Eqavet framework, for example, or they were doing that not so systematically or scientifically, but for their purposes, they managed to gather very useful information, and they were reacting to these inputs with adapting the VET provision to the labor market needs and also to the needs of individual students. We asked them, what is the reason, what is the purpose? Do you find tracking VET graduates and monitoring the labor market needs useful? And they would respond with this reason. We want to evaluate our educational programs and adapt them to the needs of labor market. We would like to improve career orientation for our students. We use this information from the labor market for promoting the school or for promoting individual educational program, and also to increase the enrollment into the VET programs. And we use this feedback information from VET graduates and also from employers to create new short and formal educational programs, mostly for adult participants. Then we tried to find out how or which Eqavet indicators are monitored on the level of VET providers, and half of VET providers are monitoring the Eqavet indicator number 9 through different questionnaires, annual meetings, interviews, and formal discussions with employers. A little less, but still in high rate, VET providers are monitoring Eqavet number 6. So they are asking the former students and also the employers about how satisfied are with the acquired skills during their studies and how supported are these skills during their employment. But only 20% of VET providers had data on placement rate of graduates 6 months or 1 year after completion of VET programs. So we have created the new development activity, which only takes place in 2021. And we just finalized the first phase of piloting. We have invited 4 pilot schools, and through questionnaires on web page, we made a contact with the former graduates. And in this first phase, we were addressing only Eqavet indicator 5 and 6A. And the conclusions were that the VET providers are highly motivated to participate in this activity and to continue with development of the VET graduate tracking system. and they would like to implement. They would like to contribute to the well-developed system, and they would like to implement it into their regular practice. But they are prepared to approach to VET graduates through questionnaires and online service. They are not prepared to approach to the graduates through telephone service. This can be an obstacle because in that way we cannot get the 100% response rate. And we found out for this in this first phase, what I have already mentioned before, that we cannot summarize the findings or the results from the level of VET providers and make conclusions on quality of the whole VET system, since the needs for VET graduate tracking systems on the level of VET providers are different than the needs of the system. And also on the system level, we would need a more scientific approach, and the methodology which works and is good enough for VET providers is not good enough for the system level. That were our first findings. And now in the next period from 2021 to 2023, in this next Eqavet project, we will continue with the developing the tracking system and evaluating system of the VET provision. That's all for now.
Thank you very much, Sasha, for this very interesting presentation. Θα ήθελα να επισημάνω πάλι εδώ και στην παρουσίαση της Σάσα, αναφέρθηκε στη χρήση των Eqavet indicators. Ένα πάρα πολύ ωραίο παράδειγμα για μας που είμαστε στο μετερίζει της ασφάλισης ποιότητας. Είναι πάρα πολύ σημαντική προσπάθεια. Να επισημάνω πάλι τις προκλήσεις που αναφέρονται στην εφαρμογή της έρευνας, αν θα είναι μέσω ερωτηματολογίου ή μέσω τηλεφωνικών κλήσεων. Για μια ακόμα φορά επιβεβαιώνεται ότι είναι πολύπλοκη και πολυπαραγωγική η διενέργεια έρευνας της παρακολούθησης των αποφύτων της ΕΚ. Και επίσης, όπως και στη Κροατία έτσι και στη Σλοβενία, δεδομένου ότι έχουν μια προσέγγιση στο κομμάτι των VET providers, στο Ινστιτούτο Παροχής Επαγγελματικής Κατάρτισης, υπάρχει μια δυσκολία να κάνουν μια εκγενίκευση των αποτελεσμάτων σε κεντρικό επίπεδο, ούτως ώστε να μπορεί να εφαρμοστεί ένα εθνικό σύστημα παρακολούθησης, το οποίο βέβαια, όπως είπαμε και πριν, όλα τα συστήματα λίγο πολύ, σε κάποιες χώρες λίγο πιο πολύ, σε κάποιες χώρες λιγότερο, είναι σε ένα στάδιο ωριμότητας. Ούτως ή άλλως και η σύσταση του Ευρωπαϊκού Συμβουλίου για το tracking system έχει βγει το 2017. Οπότε μια διαδικασία η οποία θα πάρει κάποιο χρόνο, είναι στα ελληνικά learning procedure, είναι μια διεργασία μάθησης για όλους μας και μέσα από αυτό θεωρώ θα μπορέσουμε να απτύξουμε συστήματα τα οποία θα παράγουν αποτελέσματα τα οποία έχουν πραγματικά έννοια και αξία για να κάνουμε πολιτικές, εκπαιδευτικές και πολιτικές απασχόλησης, ώστε να μπορέσουμε να βοηθήσουμε τα κράτη-μέλη το καθένα και εννοείται και την Ευρώπη γενικότερα. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Thank you very much once again for your presentation. Και τώρα θα ήθελα να περάσω στον κύριο Ραυτόπουλο, τον Βασίλη, ο οποίος θα μας παρουσιάσει τη μελέτη που έγινε στα πλαίσια του έργου του Eqavet του συγκεκριμένου, που έχει να κάνει με ένα μοντέλο διασφάλισης ποιότητας που αφορά στην αναβάθμιση ενός προγράμματος σπουδών της επαγγελματικής εκπαίδευσης κατάρτισης μέσω από την προσέγγιση των μαθησιακών αποτελεσμάτων. Εφαρμόσαμε αυτό το μοντέλο και κάναμε μια πολύ μικρή πιλωτική εφαρμογή για την ειδικότητα του βοηθού νοσηλευτή τραυματολογίας. Κύριε Ραυτόπουλε, έχετε το λόγο και λοιπόν να δούμε την παρουσίασή σας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ και να σας ευχαριστήσω πολύ για την ευγενή καλοσύνη που είχατε να με καλέσετε. Έμαθα πάρα πολλά σήμερα και μάλιστα είμαι και πολύ χαρούμενος γι' αυτό. Η σημερινή μου λοιπόν ομιλία, διάλεξη, συζήτηση έχει να κάνει με τη διασφάλιση της ποιότητας. Θα δανειστώ μαζί σας την εμπειρία μου από τον ακαδημαϊκό χώρο και κυρίως από τη θέση του διεθνή αξιολογητή και διεθνή επιθεωρητή σε συστήματα διασφάλισης ποιότητας προγραμμάτων σπουδών. Στην παρούσα φάση, λοιπόν,